Welcome to another amazing episode of Retrovaniacs. As always, I'm Jeremy Parmentier, here with Jeremy Gregory.
Hey, guys.
And Billy Holiday.
Hello there.
And this week we're looking at a early Genesis game. I believe it's pronounced Chakan The Forever Man. But before we talk about that, I'm probably wrong in how I say it. Jeremy, what have you been playing since our last show?
Not too much. I continue to play Destiny 2. That is that game that has just got my attention. Forsaken expansion is really great. If you like Destiny, I can't talk that up enough. Gambit mode is amazing. I'm not going to sit here and just describe all of this stuff again and again and again because we've talked about Destiny constantly. But I did get to try out the new Nintendo Online that just launched. $20 a year. It's got like 3 pricing levels. It's kind of weird because like it's $3.99 a month, $7.99 for 3 months, or just $20 for a full year. Mm-hmm. So if you're not paying $20 for a full year, you're kind of getting ripped off with this. And one of the things it comes with is the NES games that you can just play on the Switch. And so far, it's pretty nice. I mean, I know it's one of those things, if you've got an NES Classic, you're just like, well, I've kind of got a lot of these games and more. But it's so fast and so easy just to fire up those games on the Switch. You don't have to press the reset button to make a save state anymore. It's just convenient, and it's nice to have those games there on the Switch finally. Uh-huh. It should have had a virtual console in the first place, but I think this is maybe the most we're going to get as far as a virtual console on the Switch. And so far, I'm really liking what it is.
I was also on there for a few minutes. I noticed online play. Now, I'm not 100% certain, but are all the games that are 2-player on there, can they all be played online?
From what I can tell, yes.
Yeah,
that seems like why there's a good number of them on there.
So my question for you now, when are you going to step up, catch that ass whooping on pro wrestling then?
Oh, man, I keep forgetting that game's on there, and I occasionally see it out of the corner of my eye. I'm just like, man, I can't believe that game's on here. It's been I think last time I played it was for this podcast, but yeah, it's a decent little selection. It's kind of heavy on the sports games. It's got a lot of baseball, soccer, stuff like that. It, of course, has Tecmo Bowl, and that would be the number one reason for me to play online with anyone. Mm-hmm. But the rest of it's kind of what you would get on the NES Classic. So right now, I don't think it's quite as nice as a selection as what's on the NES Classic. But, with how Nintendo's supposed to keep adding to this every month, it could end up being a really nice add-on to Nintendo's kind of crappy paid online service so far.
Well, it's got River City Ransom. That would be a great 2-player game to play with other people. And the year I get a Switch, which will probably be 2033 at the rate I'm going, I will definitely be excited about all the Nintendo games that are there. It does look like it's pretty nice. Is it just Nintendo, like original Nintendo, or do they have Super Nintendo on there too?
It's just Nintendo.
Is that the plan, or do they not say yet?
From what that's all they've announced. So, you're not actually downloading these games individually or anything. It's actually an app that once you sign up for Nintendo Online, it's also on the store as well. You just download that app, you start it up, and it's got all of the games just kind of off to the side, and they're already there basically as soon as you download it. So there's no individual downloads. It's not streaming anything. Everything's just kind of there. And from what I understand, every month they will continue adding more to it. Now, I don't know if it's just going to switch out everything. I don't think so, because that seems like a lot more work than what Nintendo would want to put into this. But, maybe 2 or 3 games come in and 2 or 3 games go out. I don't know how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
But if they keep adding on to it, I think it's just going to continue to be NES games, and maybe down the road might get a Super NES app or something like that.
Yeah. And I think it's probably worth mentioning at this point in time, now that this has launched, if you wanted to play any of the major Switch titles like Mario Kart, I think it's necessary now to have a membership, I believe.
Yeah, and the little Nintendo Direct trailer they had for it was kind of maddening because they made it out to be like this feature. You're like, oh, you can play Splatoon with your friends now. It's like, oh, I've been able to do that for free for the last year and a half. Like,
you can pay for it now, though.
Yeah, like, thanks, Nintendo. I can pay for that now. And I kind of feel I play Splatoon pretty regularly, and going into the lobby after Nintendo Online launched was pretty sad because all the little kids, all their friends are gone. And, you can kind of read these little messages above each player's heads if you walk up to them. And everyone's just like, oh, man, I miss my friends because they can't afford Nintendo Online and stuff like that. It's just kind of sad. But, that's just how it is now. Nintendo's getting some of that money. You got to pay some of that Nintendo tax to play online now.
It's still cheaper than the PlayStation 4 tax or the Xbox Live tax. So I'll take it. But it's not like I'm going to get rid of, paying for the PlayStation Online either. So it's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, for $20 a year, I can't really say too much bad about it. I mean, it's if you got $20, there you go.
Now, Billy, you've gotten you're at least closer to the hurricane that just came through than either Jeremy or I. Did you have a chance to play anything, or were you just hiding?
I spent a good deal of time hiding, and the time that I was not hiding, I had a very extensive blackout here. Our power at the place I'm staying, of course, my job I'm working at is unfortunately much further from much closer rather to the coast than I normally would be. I could have been high and dry back home. Instead, I was weathering the storm here. Lost power for a good part of a week. So before that, though, and on some desperate occasions where I took my console over to my work, hooked it up to a TV there, and played. I have been all over that Spider-Man that just came out for the PS4. I'm sure we'll talk more about it over time. I believe Jeremy is playing it a little bit when he can shake himself from that destiny. But I'll just say right now, I have never, up till, when unfortunate time I had to stop playing, I have never just sank so much time into a game with the intent of getting 100% on it. And I compared it with you guys with Batman games, Arkham City. Arkham Asylum was fine, but Arkham City is when you got a little bit more of the kind of, the smaller open world type thing. And this is very much in vein of that. As to say how I consider that to be the best Batman game, this is by far the best Spider-Man game and one of the best superhero experiences on any console. I cannot recommend it enough. Other than that, I toyed around on, like Jeremy was just talking about Nintendo's new online thing for a little bit. I played a few games on there, and like Jeremy said, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what they add because they have created a pretty seamless experience so far. I found as soon as it downloaded and I opened it up, I was playing something within a matter of seconds, and switching back and forth from games is simple. But yeah, I'm hoping to see a couple more things on there. And I also broke down, hadn't got to play it too much, picked up that Fire Pro Wrestling on the PS4. I know it's been around on Steam for quite some time. Always been a big fan of that series. And yeah, Fire Pro Wrestling, I would say maybe even better than Pro Wrestling on the NES.
Do you have your 1999 WCW Nitro roster filled out yet?
Well, I will tell you a few, and Jeremy's talking about it comes with a lot of Japanese wrestlers, current and past, and another roster that is kind of some, obvious characters from other promotions here in the United States. But there is a robust feature online where people, they create wrestlers, rings, like ring mats, ring aprons, even referees. And I'll let Jeremy know I had the first thing I downloaded for whatever reason, I believe it was referee Nick Patrick. Because I need these matches called down the middle.
Yeah.
And, but no, just last night, before I went to bed, I had picked up an Alex Wright and a Disco Inferno.
Jesus.
So we're on our way. I just need to get that sold out mat. It'll be fun.
I feel bad for the person that out there that actually had to make a custom Disco Inferno and how much time they had to spend on that.
Well, you guys are speaking Chinese. I have no idea what you guys are talking about at all. That's terrible. But at the same time, I would also, if I had the time, describe how I've fallen even harder back into Monster Hunter World. But I'm not going to do that because, thankfully, there was a demo for Mega Man 11. And if there's something that's going to pull me away from Monster Hunter, it's a Mega Man game. Did either of you guys take time to play it?
I did. I played through it, and I mean it's a demo in every sense of the word. You get your one stage, and all I can say at the end of it is this is not negative, but it's Mega Man. It's certainly Mega Man. If Mighty Number 9 didn't scratch that itch, which I don't think it scratched a single itch for anybody, then this will do it.
Yeah, I played the level as well. I didn't expect much from it, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. I kind of like the new little gimmicks that it has. You can either speed up or slow down time with a button, or you can make yourself more powerful. Mm-hmm. So, and I've constantly found myself slowing down time because that just made the game way easier. You do have a meter that drains every time you use one of those, so you can't just use it all the time. But it seems like those two things are the kind of the two main things that sets it apart from other Mega Man games. And I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was very happy with it. I was concerned when they were showing the previews for it because the last thing that was really pushed to be very Mega Man like was Mighty Number 9. And you're right, Mighty Number 9 does not feel like Mega Man. It feels like if you've only played Mega Man and then decided to make a game, but it doesn't feel like you're making Mega Man. And I know a lot of that's because they couldn't make Mega Man, so they made something that was extremely like Mega Man, but different enough. But all the gimmicks that Mighty Number 9 had were awful and not enjoyable. This is Mega Man, and I do like the tweaks, like Jeremy just said. The speed up and slow down, or not speed up, but the slow down and extra power is a neat little tweak. And if you overdo it, if you overblow your gear, you can't use those things for like 30 seconds while it recharges. And in some cases, that means you're probably screwed because unfortunately there are sections where it's not required to have the slowdown, but it certainly makes things a lot more doable. At least in that one level. I mean, it's one level and one boss. I did not beat the boss, but I got to him. Not because I didn't want to beat it anymore, but I'm going to do it when the actual game comes out. So I figured, okay, I've played the level. I'm happy with it. I would definitely play more of this. So the demo has made its purpose. But yeah, it's good to see that. I like that it has, it looks pretty. It doesn't look like they didn't go with some crazy redesign of the game. It's nice new graphics on top of Mega Man with a few new tweaks, and it's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it. I was not expecting to enjoy it at all. And I probably end up getting the full game because it's not, I don't know how the full game's going to play out, but just based on that one level, it wasn't the incredibly maddening hard Mega Man difficulty that a lot of the newer ones were kind of got to that point with. So it was a more enjoyable game for me, I guess. It felt maybe more like the old Super NES or the PlayStation Mega Man, the one I actually enjoy the most.
Yeah, and I have to say that I'm not the biggest Mega Man fan. I've enjoyed the series, but I haven't been sitting around clamoring for another one. I think I got a little burned out on the last couple of offerings. But yeah, this one had really grabbed my attention. Like Jeremy said, I think this one's going to be a little bit more accessible, and this will probably be the first Mega Man game in quite some time that I pick up.
I think it might be the first Mega Man game we've seen in forever, man. Hey, speaking of that, this is the game we're going to talk about this week. Chakan The Forever Man for the Sega Genesis. Oh, I'm a master of podcasts. I'm very excited that I did that.
Now, this was, I think I was clamoring for this one. I remember mentioning this one a couple of times. This was one that I saw in the video store. It's one of those bizarre things. I think we've all done it. We keep seeing it in the video store. Our eye goes to it every single time we're there, but we never pick it up. And this was one of those games for me. I had seen it. I had looked over the box. It looked interesting. It looked like kind of a darker Genesis title. But yeah, never picked it up. Always thought about it. You don't really hear much about it, though. It didn't exactly make any of the best of Sega Genesis lists out there. But I thought it would be a good one for us to give a shot.
So wait, you never actually played this back in the day?
No.
God damn, you bastard. I thought this was like something that you like held in high esteem as like some sort of nostalgic game.
I'm sorry. Can I do one like big blanket apology rather than have to do it every few minutes this show?
I'm enjoying that someone else gets to apologize. So go ahead, Billy.
I've got one, and this covers everything. I'm not going to do it again. I'm sorry. We should have just done Slam City with Scottie Pippen like I've been wanting to.
Agreed.
I probably would have pushed harder for this, and I think I would have been wrong as well. But this game I had never played. I had seen the box a million times. I mean, it's an early Genesis game. It came out in 1992, only in the United States and Europe. Didn't come out in Japan. It was published by Sega, but it was not made by Sega. I think it was I forgot the name of the company, but I don't think they did much else after this. Unsurprisingly, it is. The box, it looks like it's, some comic book character, like a zombie with swords, and the back of the box makes it look like it's some kind of action / game. So it never was something I was like, I've got to try this right now. But it's one of those games that when people bring up, oh, these are like hidden gems on the Genesis you may not have played, this is on a lot of those lists. So I was excited to try it, and the little bit I knew about it was that it was a little bit different. It had some neat ideas, and I agree that it's definitely different, and it does have some extremely cool ideas. But I don't think they're pulled off as well as they should be by any means. Chakan himself is essentially like an ancient wizard of some sort that got into a fight with death, challenged death to a fight to prove that he was superior to death, and he did win. But then as part of his curse for winning, he gets to find the ultimate evil everywhere and defeat it. And when he's done that, he can finally have permanent rest. Otherwise, he'll live forever in agony. So you're Chakan. You get nothing but your 2 swords to start with, and you have to go into the 4 different planes of air, earth, fire, and water, and fight some ultimate evils. And then death will free you from your curse and kill you. The gameplay itself is pretty standard Genesis level design at first. A lot of the early levels are that kind of massive maze. We've talked about it with like the RoboCop game has it, the Batman games have it. All the Genesis games we've covered kind of have this maze-like level design. And what makes this different is the jumping specifically is a problem. You have 3 buttons on a standard Genesis. This was too early to have the 6-button configuration. So you've got the A button will let you switch your weapons, which early on does literally nothing because you have 1 weapon. Your B button lets you attack, and the C button lets you jump. Jumping in this game is going to be, it's got a lot of platforms. A lot of platforming and a lot of deaths you can fall to, either onto spikes or onto fire or just into the great nether beyond. And it's got a whole lot of those jumps where if you're not at the very, very ass edge of the ledge you're jumping from, you're not going to hit the ledge you're jumping to, despite that it looks like you did, and you will clip through it and fall to your death immediately, which will kill you. You don't come back up on the side. You die and have to restart that level again.
It should be stated that I think one of the biggest problems with this game is the jumping, and it's compounded by the sheer amount of it. Like, you have got to master that jump. You got to master that fucking double jump. And yeah, like Jeremy P. said, the first thing you notice is it is that standard early 90s Genesis game where fucking there are just platforms and just for the fucking sake of there being platforms. I forgot how annoying I find this in a lot of early Genesis games. Speaking of early Genesis games, that soundtrack for this thing, I can't tell if I like it or not. it's certainly different. There's some dark, brooding things in there, but it gets repetitive also. I found pretty early on.
This kept giving me deja vu when we played X-Men for Genesis. Like it just really kind of has that sound to it, the feel of the game, the stages themselves, except you're not playing as a cool X-Men character. You're playing as...
It is similar. I mean, you've got the that music and the stages are all... They didn't vary quite enough for me, and just some of them were just so dark and bleak. And I get it, it's a darker type game, but it just there's a line between trying to convey that and just being fucking drab looking. I think this is what that fell towards most of the time.
Well, it is much like the X-Men game, although that was much more obvious in the X-Men game. It is based on a comic book, the comic book Chakan by Robert A. Krause, R.A.K. Comics. I guess it's not a major comic, wasn't DC or Marvel. It's just some independent comic. So I'm not 100% sure, how this happened. I guess the producer of the game apparently is the same person who is the producer for Eco the Dolphin. So I guess, this was pre-Eco, but I guess they were already someone that was known, and I guess he was a comic fan, found this guy's comic and thought this would be a cool game. And actually, the story of the comic is the story of the game, and it actually is a pretty much video game sounding story. You're a man with this curse, you have to kill all these enemies. That pretty much lays itself out for a video game. So that's not that's not too shocking. In the worlds that you go to, so there's let me try that again. The game starts you in a central portal area. You can see there's like a big symbol in the middle of the room, and later on you find out that's actually a progress bar that shows you the different different zones you'll go to and the different stages you've cleared out. Each zone, earth, air, fire, and water, actually has 6 stages. The manual will tell you that there's the regular plane and the elemental plane for each of those zones, but each of those are broken up into 3 units. So really it's 6 levels that have kind of a midpoint after the 3rd level. So 2 groups of 3 levels, a.k.a. 6 levels. But you can't go to the second half of those levels. So you can't go, let's say, start with Earth 1 and finish all 6 Earth levels and then go to fire, or air. You have to clear out all 3 of each of the main planes to open the doorways to the second set of 3 levels. So you have to kind of go back and forth just because the game makes you. But also... I mentioned that the A button lets you get different weapons. You're going to have to go into each of those zones. The first one of those zones for each of the planes will give you a new weapon. There's 4 extra weapons in this game. A scythe, a hammer, an axe, and the world's worst grappling hook, which we're going to talk about a lot later. But you have to get those items in the first world, and it lets you try the second world, and in some cases you might be able to get through them. But for example, the water zone, the first zone you can get through, and it gives you, I believe, the hammer, maybe the axe, it doesn't matter. Whatever you get, though, the second level, it's not the hammer, because the second level, you can't progress out of the starting area without the hammer. And you don't know that. The manual tells you these items will do certain things, but you haven't had the hammer yet to learn, what the walls look like that I can break with a hammer. The other weapons you get, aside from being weapons, are also useful tools. So you'll find out as you get through the game that, for example, the scythe you can use to cut open spider webs that are found in the earth levels. And the axe you can use to cut open doors, although I'll get into that when we get to a level that uses it. And the hammer will break open certain walls. And the grappling hook is a grappling hook. So there's plenty of areas that you'll see after the first world in each of these planes that will have these obvious, like, gargoyle head grappling hook hold areas. And they're all over the place. And some of the later levels, it's your main mode of transportation. And if you thought the jumping in this game was painful, the grappling hook is far more painful. But again, I think I'm jumping way ahead to talk about the grappling hook because there's still more parts of the basic game that we haven't really covered. So aside from your jump, which is bad, you do have an automatic double jump. You can double jump from the very beginning. However, 2 problems with this double jump. One, if you try to double jump after you've hit the apex of your jump, so after you've hit the highest point of your jump and you're on the way down, you cannot initiate that second jump. And that is irritating. I'm sure a lot of games do that because it wasn't completely unheard of. But for a game like this where there's a lot of platforms, many of the platforms, the bottom of them, you cannot jump through, so you'll hit your head and fall down. When you try to do a double jump to get to a platform, or a single jump, and you're just slightly not far enough, and then you try to do a double jump, but if you do it too early, you'll smash your head into a platform, and then you can't make that jump. There's plenty of places where I assumed you'd be able to do that. I jump almost all the way to the bottom of my first jump, and then do a second jump to kind of go a little farther. Can't do that in this game. And that's very, very frustrating. And also, if once you jump and do the double jump, your character will do like a Samus-like spin move that doesn't hurt anybody. But if you hit the attack button, you will shoot your swords out, assuming you have your swords equipped, and do like this spiral, a super attack that actually is great. That does a lot of damage. You're basically invincible when you have it on. You're going to do that a lot, especially since most of these levels are going to involve things flying at you while you try to make these jumps. And of course, when you get hit while you are using a grappling hook or while you're jumping, you will get knocked back far enough that you will fall to your death. This game, because you are, as a character, an undying entity, the good news is, no matter how many times you die, you get to restart that level. So if you go into a level and you fall to your death, no big deal. Most of these worlds are very short. They might be a little confusing, and there might be parts you can't get through until you get an item. But in general, these worlds, once you know what you're supposed to do, you can probably go through them in less than a minute. You agree?
For the most part, yeah. Once you figure out what you're doing and where you're going and actually kind of master that jump, figuring out where you go in a lot of these levels is a lot of the challenge. It is a hell of a fucking game as far as difficulty anyway. But because of that maze-like design of some of these levels, you don't know if the end's going to be up, down, left, or right. You just have to explore. And that can be a problem as well as far as progression, because as you mentioned to me, I wasn't even paying attention. You also have a small hourglass as you're playing these levels. That's kind of the sand is counting or going through the hourglass. And that's not just for the stage. That's cumulative for the entire three levels. So if I actually ran out of time trying to figure out where to go in one of those, it's like I can't remember, is Earth level, the ones with the bugs or whatever.
Yeah,
all over
the spiders are all over in the Earth world.
Yeah, in the third level, I ran out of time, and I had it just sends you back. You failed. So I wasn't aware of that at all. So it is, a challenge of just figuring your way through those levels and finding where you're going to go is definitely a huge challenge is one of the main parts of this game as far as difficulty goes.
Yeah, that hourglass is, like you mentioned, it's not a timer that goes over as you get hit. It's just over time. So you can die a million times, and that thing is very slow to move. However, you're right. Once it gets down to a certain point, like it starts flashing, and you have maybe a minute to finish the level you're in. Hopefully it's the third or the last level of each zone. If you don't, then you have to restart all your progress from the very beginning of just that plane. So each plane, earth, air, fire, and water, has their own unique hourglass. And that graphic in the very middle of the portals room will show you where each one is. Again, the good news is once you know what you're doing, sure, you can blow through these levels before you even really see the sand go down in those things. But yes, all these levels are mazes. Like Jeremy said, sometimes you're not sure exactly, what the end point of the level is. For example, the first levels in each of these planes is to find the weapon. So the first time I was wandering through the zone, I saw the weapon, but I didn't go for it because I figured I had to find something else or whatever, and I kept wandering around. Eventually, when I grabbed it, it just, like, you grab the weapon, all of a sudden it freezes, and you go back to the main portal area. So it doesn't even say, like, what do you do now? Like, you've got the axe or whatever the item is, and you go back to the portal zone. So then when you go into the same portal, you're in a brand new area. You can't go back to the first area, unless, of course, you run out of time in your hourglass, and you just start the second area again. The game, when you first enter any plane, for the very first time you enter it, there's like a screen with an hourglass, and it gives you a little bit of story as to why you're in that area. But the story is if you wrote it for like a comic. It doesn't tell you what the direction for the level is. It's just like, Chakan goes into the fiery demon pit of whatever, and there are spiders, and he is terrifying, or whatever it is. Like, that comes through, but it doesn't say what you're doing. So it doesn't say find the axe to end this section. And they could do that. There could be any little bit of direction would be a massive help. I mean, again, the first set of levels, no big deal. Let's find the weapon. Sure, you probably don't need help for that. But a great example is the second water temple, or second water level. When you get to the end, there is nothing. Like, you get to the top. It starts at the bottom of the map. You have to climb up more or less, but it still has some left and right. But you're basically going from the bottom to the top of the screen. And the entire map, there's a doorway even at the very end after you pass all these octopus character things you have to fight. And if you don't fight them, you just go to the door. You're like, well, I'm at the door. It's the end, right? No, that's not it. What am I supposed to do? So I start killing octopuses, and eventually I die, and nothing happens, and I couldn't figure out how to finish the level. Well, even though all those octopi, I guess, look exactly the same, only one of them is the target octopi you have to kill to finish the level. And it's, of course, the last one. So, I mean, I guess I could have been smart and just assumed it was the last one, but why would you assume that? They're all the same. They're kind of all in like a different piece of that top area. Why is that the thing that ends the level? Nothing tells you exactly what the point is in any level, and that is extremely frustrating.
Yeah, the worst part is that there is no direction to it. Like, the first level's easy enough. You start getting these weapons. You figure, well, I'm going to get to the end. There's going to be a weapon. The stage is going to end. After that, you don't really know what you're doing. And sometimes, yes, the stage will end. You'll fight a boss. Good to go. But then there's other times like that where you're just not sure where the fuck you're going, what you're doing. There's one in the water level or water stages, the third one, where it's just doors over and over. And I could not figure out that's actually when I stopped playing the game, because I couldn't figure out where I was supposed to go. Every door just led back to the previous door. And I guess because of the way of how the game progresses, I wasn't sure if I was just missing some weird switch that the game was putting out there that I missed. I didn't kill an enemy I didn't know that I was supposed to kill that would progress the stage. So it's just one of those things. You just don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I encountered that a lot of times in this game. And it was one of the main sources of frustration because, there's already some trouble with the control. I found the control to be so stiff on this one. We talked about and there's already so much going against you, and to just not have a clear idea of a goal. I appreciate games that want you to go out there and kind of and do different things, but it kind of falls under the Castlevania 2 thing of, well, I wouldn't have thought of that, or that is incredibly not obvious, and there's nothing to pinpoint that to me. And I just encountered that a lot, and that's a very frustrating thing, especially when you tack on the time limit on here, and it's a generous one. I mean, and I did run out of time on one occasion, but it does take a while, and that was because I was just struggling left and right. But yeah, the very kind of obtuse goal for some of the stages is a great source of frustration.
And it kind of sucks because this is kind of a weird Metroidvania almost. Not. I mean, you are getting weapons and things like that you need to progress in other stages that you couldn't get past before, and that's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
But the way the game goes about it, this is just the worst way that you could possibly make a game like this.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that water level, and I know exactly what level you're talking about. There are a whole bunch of doors, and there's no direction of where to go, and you have to figure out. And I had to look this up because I couldn't figure it out either. Eventually, if you go far enough to the left, and you have to keep using your grappling hook to keep, flying across the top while you fight these green bird things that fly at you. Eventually, you get to a point where there's like a wall. It looks like almost like a castle wall, and there's a gap in it. You can jump into that. Even once you're in there, you've still got to make sure you can, stay at the top and not fall down. Once you do fall down, and I did every time, I never managed to get over all the way to the left as I needed to. Then you get presented with what looks like a big hedge with snakes or something that come out of it, and you can see clearly the door you need is on the other side or whatever. But I couldn't figure out how to get through that hedge, and there's no way to go back or back up from where you are. You're just kind of stuck in this underwater or underground cave with water at the bottom and trying to figure out how to get past this stupid wall. You can't burn it down. You can't use your axe to cut it down. You can't do anything like that. I had to look up what to do, and I still don't know how you'd ever figure this out because nothing makes a noise. Nothing like comes up with a message that says, and now the wall is removed or whatever. You jump above it, which means you have to either jump super fast so you don't have the time to land, because you can land on top of that weird hedge for like a split second before it hurts you and you fall down. So you either have to jump on it immediately and flip, use your double jump to flip up to the next wall, or be invincible, which I'll get into how you become invincible in a minute, because that's one of the coolest things about this game. But yeah, you have to double jump on top of it, and then there's like a spider on a tablet, and apparently you hit it with your sword, and then you go back, and all of a sudden you can, like, the hedge just falls down, and you can go to the next door. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And there's plenty of that stuff in this game where, like, there's hidden walls in certain sections where how would you ever know there's a hidden wall? There's no sign that it's hidden. There's no way to know other than just blindly jumping to what's probably your death to say, oh, wait, look, I just came through that wall. Like, I got through a couple levels by just pure frustration because I wasn't sure what to do, and all of a sudden things worked. There was it's either Fire 3 or Fire 2. There are these doorways, like, not doorways like that you can open and close, but these locked doors. And there's nothing you can get into other than there's a locked door on one side of a wall and a locked door on another side of the wall. And I just ran up to it and just kept using my axe over and over again because I was just mad. And eventually they broke open. There's no sound. There's no damage to the door to let you know that's working. It's just eventually I was like, after 5 hits, the door opened. I'm like, well, that's awful. How would you ever know to do that? Like, I assumed I was just stuck. I didn't know what else to do. And if you didn't have the axe, because you don't get it in the fire section or whatever, then how would you have ever known? Like, there's plenty of things in this game where if I didn't look it up, I would have gotten through, maybe, if I'm lucky, just the weapon sections. And that's in 2018 when I can look it up. I have no idea how anybody in 1992, 1993 ever beat this game. Ever. It's unintelligible.
Who hated people enough to make this game like this? Because I had to look up the video on how to actually break through that wall because I was using the hammer. I thought, well, obviously there's a door here and I can't get through it. I've got all these weapons and I was using the hammer. I did use the axe, but I didn't, the game gives you no reason to think it's actually working. It doesn't shake anything. It doesn't make a sound. And going back even to that water level, there are doors all over that thing that you can go into. Why even have those doors if there's no reason to have them? Like, they're just MacGuffins. There's no reason to actually go through those doors at all. And all they do whenever you do go, it places you back earlier in the stage. I can get to that part in the game that you described that you kind of have to get over without having to go through the doors. So it's just one of those games. Like, it just seems like the person that made it hates the player.
The game's not all terrible. It's got some really good ideas buried in what I can only blame as being an early Genesis title. I think if this would have come out maybe a couple years later, maybe some of these problems wouldn't have been as bad. I mean, stiff control, maybe, but some of the level design is definitely poor. But in each of these levels, you'll find potions everywhere. There's 4 potions, 1 for each plane as well. So there's air potions, water potions, fire potions, and earth potions. And you can hold, I believe, 4 of each at most, and they go in your inventory. If you pause the game, you'll see a screen that has all these, when you first start, 12 open spots and 4 spots at the top for what you'd find out after a few minutes that they're for potions. Once you earn the right potions to do a spell, that screen will fill up with what the spell, well, not with what the spell does. That would be too useful. With images that show you what the spells do. Now, the manual, to be fair, does explain every one of these spells. So, in theory, you would have a manual and you'd have it in front of you while you're playing this that shows you what the spells do. However, it would have still been nice to have something, a little block of text at the bottom that says, even if it's just one word like invisibility, fire, earth, anything to know what these spells do at first. I had to keep looking back and forth at the manual page to see what the spells did. But this game, when you get the potions, it lets you at whenever you feel like it, pretty much, pause the game, pick the spell you want to pick. It'll go back to the screen you were on, and all of a sudden, Chakan is holding these 2 potions above his head, because all these spells take 2 potions and some mix of those 4 elements. And they actually, having those spells makes some of the sections we're having difficulty with very easy. But the potions are kind of limited, so you have to be careful. You can't just be invincible the whole time through a level. You'll run out of potions and have to go hunt more down. And especially in the later levels, it's not easy to hunt these things down. You might go through a level where there may be 1 red potion in the entire level. So you got to make sure you don't waste those things. But the spells that you can cast once you have the potions are actually quite useful. There's an invisibility spell that doesn't make you invincible, but it does mean that a lot of things will ignore you and you can walk through projectiles. There's an invincibility, which is exactly what it sounds like. There's a sword power for all 4 elements. There is a heal spell that's super useful. There's essentially like a grenade hurt all enemies spell that does a lot of damage. I didn't realize how much damage it did until I watched a Let's Play, and they basically blow up bosses with 2 uses of that. It does a lot of damage. So it's worth saving those. I use that for the Earth boss, the 3rd Earth level boss, the Spider Queen or whatever. I just gave up and used that twice, and she died. It was great. But I used all my potions, and I had to go find a bunch more to start the next section. Trying to think what the other spells are. There's one that gives you like a doorway that will open, lets you go back to the main area, so you kind of get a checkpoint, which is nice. It's the kind of thing that when I first started playing the game, I was using them way too sparingly. I was afraid I wouldn't get any more potions later, and so I was trying to plow through areas just so I wouldn't waste these potions. But then when I finally just got fed up and was like, you know what, I bet invincibility would be great here. There are parts of these levels, especially in the later half of the game, where you have to use these items or you're not going to get through them. And it's not a matter of being cheap. I think it's designed so that you have to remember, wait, I have invisibility. I bet I can use invisibility to get through this section where, all these bats are flying around and I don't know how you get through it and they keep knocking me off the platform. Well, if you're invisible, you can go right through them because they don't see you. You can jump and make your jumps easily. There's a lot of really cool things with these potions that if the game was just a little more tweaked on the level design, I think those potions would have been the coolest thing. And that's what drew me to keep playing this game, because I was like, wait a minute, these potions and these abilities actually make these levels kind of fun, and I'm going to figure this out. That does stop later. They cease being any fun whatsoever.
Yeah, that's kind of what I found as well. This is one of those games where it's a neat idea, and you can't. I think we need to mention you are not going to progress in this game without using these potions. I'm sure there's some people out there that can go through this game without even dying and never use a potion. But if you're like us and have never played this game before and you don't know what you're going into, don't think that these potions are just something that are just random power-ups that you can use whenever. You have to use these potions to progress. And once you learn what they are and when to use them, then things definitely get a lot easier. The problem is that the game is very stingy with how it gives out those potions. So a mechanic that could be fun is limited by how few you actually find in the game. I think maybe if they would have gave double the potions or anything more than what you can find in these stages, then this would have been a really neat mechanic. It would have made the game a lot more fun than what it is. As it stands, you can find just enough to figure out when you need to use certain potions to get through a certain section. It's not like you can really just experiment here and there and just have fun with it. And I wish there was just a little bit more to it, a little bit more potions that you can find to experiment with it and just have fun with the game instead of being so goddamn stingy with them.
Yeah. I think a balance of giving you too many potions, because I think that would make it almost trivial in a lot of parts to get through if you could be invincible all the time. But you have that central area. You're always going back there. If they just gave you one of each colored potion in that central area, if you don't have any. So, example, if you have no red potions and you go back to the central area, there's one red potion there. But if you have one, you can't pick any up. That way, at least you get a chance to have all 4 potions. There's a good chance you can try out most of the spells, at least the ones that are almost crucial to use, life refill, The invincibility itself, you probably couldn't. I think all the weapons are 2 of one color, so 2 waters is the water sword, which just gives you a power-up sword. All it does let you do more damage. It's not required anywhere. So it would give you a chance to kind of use the tool-based spells a little more and fool around with them and not feel like, oh, I'm never going to get these back. I mean, the game is set up because you can die, and when you die, unless you run out of sand, you get to keep whatever you found in that level. So there's definite spots once you know what you're doing, that you can say, oh, that's right, I want to make sure I leave water 2 open until the very end, because if I go in there at the very beginning, I can get a black potion, a blue potion, a red potion, and jump off the edge in 10 seconds, and I can go and do it over and over again to get 4 of each. That's one of the things people do on like the speed runs. So I can see how, it's not as bad as saying, oh, I only get these potions, and if I die, I lose everything I got. No, you'll get to keep them. But if they just put them in that central area, I think it would have given you more of a chance to really play with them and see exactly what they can do. One of the other spells I forgot to mention because I didn't use it, mainly because I might have been using some save states. But one of the spells is to refill the hourglass, like reverses the time. So it doesn't necessarily refill it. It kind of slows it and lets it go back in time a little bit to give you more sand. But I think, at least from my experience playing it so far, if I ever had enough to use invincibility and a life heal, I just didn't use anything else as long as I could still cast those 2 for any boss fight. Because as long as I had invincibility and a life heal, your life bar is 6 skulls that go down in varying amounts depending on what you're hit by. As long as you can refill that, and again, invincibility lasts a lot longer than you think it would, but still not that long. Most of the bosses, at least that I got to, which is the first half, were not bad at all.
No, it wasn't too bad, honestly. And if you do have potions, it does definitely, a lot of them are very overpowered almost. And I should definitely mention that the game does have 3 difficulty levels. It does start on easy, but if you can actually change that to practice mode, if you do want to experiment with some of those potions, it gives you infinite potions. Like you can actually start a level and you have all of the potions available to you all of the time. You don't actually need to find any potions. You can just pull up the start menu, select a potion you want. You can use that over and over and over if you want to. But obviously that's kind of basically cheating. That's almost like using a game genie code. But with how hard this game is, and even the instructions itself is just like practice on this so you can actually go through the real game, using an actual real difficulty level. There's a reason it's called practice mode, but it's nice that it's in there, so it does give you an option to experiment with those if you want to. But I definitely think it makes the game way too easy if that's the way you want to go about it.
So I only really, truthfully, can say I finished the first half of this game and finished it. I got through the first 3 areas of all 4 planes and unlocked the second set of planes. And I did play in all those levels and beat some of the levels there, but I didn't finish any of them. I didn't get to the final bosses of those. Did either of you get any farther than that?
I personally did not. I started this thing off with a head of steam, but when the power came out, power went out. I was frustrated at first, but I think maybe it was a way of a higher power telling me you do not have to play this game any longer. But no, I advanced through. I did not make it quite as far as you did, though.
I beat all the 3 levels except for that last water level with the doors, and that was as far as I got.
So the second half of the game is on the elemental planes for each of those elements, and they are some of the neater ideas. The levels definitely look nicer, I think, than the first 3. Not necessarily like, oh yeah, they went crazy on these graphics, but for example, all the water levels become ice levels. Now that comes with all the bad things that ice levels have. You slide around a bunch. There's a lot of parts you jump into these ice pits that kill you instantly. And of course, there's plenty of grappling on things that don't even look like you can grapple on them. I'm not a big fan. The fire plane is all lava, and most of that is jumping on lava platforms that float around in the lava, and some of them move and some of them don't. And of course, there are things that fly at you and hit you and knock you into the lava, which will kill you instantly in one hit. The air level, this is a really cool idea. The air level, the first time you go into the I guess, air level 4, you fight these guys on these giant bugs. And when you kill them, the giant bug stays there and it has a saddle. So you can jump into it and you get to fly it around. You're like, oh, this is going to be badass. Except you can't switch your weapons in the bug. So you only have your swords, which is okay because the swords are probably the easiest weapons to use. However, getting hit by anything will knock you off your bug. Flying into the ceiling will knock you off your bug. Jumping into, getting hit, anything you touch will knock you off your bug. And the character generally is not too big, but when you put the character on a bug that's bigger than the character and you have the character on top of it and you're going through these little caves, you're constantly falling off this goddamn bug. And unfortunately, in those levels, once you fall off your bug, you're probably falling to your death. To restart the level, kill some guys on a bug, get the bug back, go 3 inches farther, get hit by a bullet or hit the ceiling, fall to your death, restart again. It was the biggest high and the biggest low, all in like a 10-second span. When I first got to this level, I was like, oh, this is a really cool idea. Oh, this is how this works? Okay, I'm done with this too. This is absolutely... I did not get through the first air level because I could not last long enough on the bug. Like I got to where I thought it was, and then just more and more shit just kept flying at me and it kept hitting me. I'm like, how are you supposed to ever get through this? It's not like you get on the bug and it changes to a shooter where you get a projectile you can do. No, you still get your dumbass swords that only go 8 directions. I mean, they're... For the world of using a sword, it's better than, Golden Axe, but it's still super hard to hit some of these things that fly at you. And you're on a flying bug that also does fall if you're not pushing any direction on it. Just absolutely frustrating for a really, really cool idea. Super frustrating.
I think that's what it comes down to. This game is full of cool ideas. Like, I love the whole dark aspect of it. I love the story. Like, everything about it is just something that I love. The weapons going back and forth between stages to progress, the bug, I didn't get to the bug thing, but that sounds like a cool idea.
Yeah.
But the game just never seems to execute on it being fun. It always finds a way to make you miserable by playing this game.
But I think that's what keeps you around for a little bit, because you just, something happens and something new, and you just think, all right, this is when the game's going to turn the corner. This is when they're going to throw me something. I've been suffering through this. This is when they're going to give me something. And they just find a way to take everything that seems interesting, everything that seems like it could play out and be a fun aspect, and it flops and nothing sticks, and everything just continues to add to the frustration as you go along, which in and of itself is frustrating, because it's a neat concept. I think it may have benefited from being maybe a later Genesis title once they kind of sharpened things up a little bit and stamped out a lot of those early problems the games that, the first couple of years worth of Genesis games had. It certainly seems like the kind of game that would have benefited once Genesis decided they were just going to go, full blast and add, gore and whatnot to their games. But each new little thing that popped up on there, I would perk up and just to be let down again. It's an exercise in how many times can you be let down by one game.
I totally agree. I mean, it's definitely kind of got that Dark Souls feel to it, where like you find a way through something, and you want to go forward just to to get past that. But there's never any real satisfaction to getting past. Yeah. It's usually just another dead end. Another impossible section that is just maddening, things just coming at you constantly, or just another thing that just doesn't make sense on how to progress. Yeah. And that was really just the struggle all the way through that game.
I also feel we need to mention this is a game that came with no passwords, no saves. It's expected you're going to plow through this in one sitting. Now that's, again, not unheard of for this time at all. But for the kind of game this is, like if Dark Souls, you mentioned, I'm not comparing this to Dark Souls, but if there was no saves in that game, no one would like Dark Souls. That would be totally, you have one life and then you get to start over from the beginning. No one would ever play that. It would never happen. Well, actually, someone would play it and it would drive me crazy that I sucked at it. But this is, I mean, even if it was a password that you can get at the end of each time you clear one of the zones, like the first time you clear the third air zone, where you're like, oh, this is awesome. Now I got a password that has my, this cleared out at the bare minimum. Like that something, because otherwise, you're not only are you trying to get through these levels and figure it out, you've got to then not run out of time on that fucking hourglass, or you have to redo everything you just did. And then if you get to a certain point, and this definitely happened to me early on, I got to the third level of Earth or something, and I couldn't get enough potions to do what I wanted to do, but I had beaten the other zones. I had nowhere else I could go to farm potions. Nothing. I had to just keep trying that Earth level over and over again with the 3 potions I could find, and eventually I did do it. So I guess it was just more, my lack of ability, but it still was like, if I didn't have the ability to have a save state on this, I would have never, ever finished those first 3.
No.
It's pretty unforgiving. Again, a lot of really, really cool ideas that the game itself just has some of the worst level design. We didn't even mention how, and this, maybe it's because you guys didn't play the later levels, but this still happens a lot in the fire level specifically. There's a lot of blind jumping in this. You can't look up and down.
Yeah.
And since almost all the places that have these little platform jumps, you're going to fall to your death in lava or ice pits or whatever, you're just blind jumping. And yeah, sure, you don't die necessarily. You get to start over at the beginning. But at the beginning of a gauntlet of blind jumps and weird platforming with a grappling hook that we didn't even really tear apart the grappling hook as much as we needed to, because not only is it really hard to use, because you have to aim explicitly for those little nugget things to hit them, but if you're hit at all by anything while you're on the grappling hook, you just fall to your death. You just fall down. You can try to re-grapple, but it's going to knock you away enough. You're not going to. It is one of the most frustrating games I've played. But the little things that made, like the potions. I liked the idea of the potions. I liked some of the, even though we just complained about the level design, like I liked the fact that I could kill those bug guys and then fly on their bugs. Like there was a lot of really cool little level designs. The second Earth world on the second half, so Earth 5, there's this giant bug monster that in certain parts of the level, which is a series of tunnels that go from left to right, the screen will shake and this giant bug will come across and push you back to the beginning. So you have to find the right order of tunnels to go in to get past this bug. Like, it's little things that I was like, that's a really cool level design. Now, I never did figure out how to get through it because I think you have to use invisibility at some point, and I didn't have 2 of those potions. But otherwise, like, the ideas for all these levels generally was enough to keep me playing. But again, because I could save, because I had a place where I could say, great, I've cleared the second air zone. Let me do a save right here so I don't have to do those 2 over and over again.
Yeah, I think we maybe need to mention that this is basically Save State Simulator 2018 for this much. I don't think I've ever used so many goddamn save states for a game on this podcast ever, possibly in any game ever. I was saving almost constantly, and for anyone that's actually trying to play through this game for realsies and not use any save states, I don't know, man. I more power to you, but I ain't doing it. I didn't do it. I save stated that shit every fucking 20 seconds sometimes. It was one of those games.
Yeah, I mean, you fucking jump save. Yeah. And don't go on. And this is one of those where, I didn't get through as far as I wanted. So I at least watched a little video. That's the most fucking frustrating thing of all. Just watching someone who obviously knows how to play this, watching an expert play through this and get through this with no trouble is maddening. To know there are people out there that can do this.
I mean, you watch the videos, and I did, to see kind of what was at the end of the game, which we need to mention what is at the end of this game. But still, you watch these people, and it's just like they make it look easy. As anyone that is very good at their craft, when they do something that they're good at and they play, it just looks so easy. But then I tried so damn hard to play this game because there are certain parts of it that I love. The whole potion thing, the occult storyline, everything about it is something that I would have fucking flipped out for when I was a kid and rented it immediately. It was never at my video store. But it's just one of those things I stopped having fun over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do the things I wanted to do with the game. So yeah, I don't know. It's just it's such a bittersweet game with me because I want to love it, but god damn, it's just misery.
You mentioned the ending. We should cover the ending. If for some reason you've decided to play along with us and you're at near the end and you don't want to get it spoiled for you, then I guess turn this off or come back in 5 minutes. I don't know. But no one is going to meet that ever. I don't think that one person exists where what I just said makes any sense. So
I don't think so.
You finish all 6 of the planes. You beat the bosses at the end of all 4. And, Death shows up and you say, Death, I've done it. I've killed all the enemies. I've killed the ultimate evils. I'm ready to be released from this curse. And Death laughs at you and points at the stars and says, oh, look at all those worlds out there, ultimate infinite worlds or whatever, full of evils that you have to find. I don't think you understood the depth of this curse. So then you get one chance to fight Death. It's unlike every other fight in the game. When you lose this one, that's it. And it doesn't look incredibly difficult, but that's watching someone who knows what to do. I'm sure I would have died in 1 minute and been like, well, that was horseshit. But if you die, then it shows a screen of I believe the ending actually shows your character trying to kill himself. And then it doesn't work, and you come back to life after you lose to Death.
Best ending to that. That's an awesome sounding ending.
Well, that's the bad ending.
Jesus.
The good ending is you defeat Death. You manage to take this one fight, and you do it. You kill Death, and all of a sudden, the hourglass that you see at the beginning of all the times you enter the worlds that has the story on it just comes up and it plays the music, and nothing happens. That's it. Or is that it? Because instead, apparently, if you let it sit there for how long is it? Some offensive amount of time.
14 minutes.
You let the hourglass sit there for 14 minutes, and it says, "Not the end." A little blob of text comes up, and it says, "Not the end." That's what you earn for one beating a game that is one of the most difficult we've covered with a one-chance boss fight at the end of a difficult game. Then you watch an hourglass for 14 minutes. There's no timer on it. I mean, it's an hourglass, but it's not like you see the sand go down. It's just a picture of an hourglass. And then a little blurb of text comes across that says, "Not the end." I can't imagine how anyone would ever have found that. Even if they were good enough to beat Death, why would you stare at that screen for 14 minutes? That's a crazy person.
Yeah, it's not even like there's no credits rolling or anything. It's literally just a picture of that class with the sand going through it. That's it. You just have to sit. You have to know to sit there for 14 minutes. And even if you knew to sit there for 14 minutes, just to see that text pop up that says "Not the end," and that's it. That's the game. That was your reward for sitting there watching that for 14 minutes.
Well, after finishing this game and doing the the one chance boss fight, which obviously you wouldn't do on your first time through. So you would have had to beat this game several times, get to that fight several times, and figure out what to do, and then that's your reward. You get to stare at the screen like a crazy person and get a little blurb of text at the end if you sat there that long. Just unbelievable.
I think it's a perfect summary for this game, though, I think.
Yeah. I would have set my Genesis and myself on fire if I was if I could see that. Like, are you really to do that? If you actually made it through that game for real, to see that it's oh man, I can't imagine anyone that actually did that and how they felt.
I do have to say, and now that we've played it, I could 100% see that if this was a TurboGrafx game that I would have had, I would have told you guys how amazing this game is, and
I was literally going to say, like, this seems like something that we should have played on the TurboGrafx, and you would have absolutely loved as a kid.
Yeah, this hits a lot of the buttons of things I would have enjoyed. And if it was I didn't have a Genesis until way later. I mean, I got the Super Nintendo late, but because I had the TurboGrafx, I had that early, and so I only had a handful of games. So I played a lot of those games so many times just to plow through to get 5 inches farther over and over and over again. Legendary Axe is a great example of a game that trying to play it now has a lot of flaws, but I played a lot of Legendary Axe. But it's one that I realized we shouldn't cover on the show after my previous requests. This has a lot of that same, if you know what you're doing and you know the levels and you know what the potions do and the best way to use them, when you watch like the Let's Plays and the speed runs, this game looks really, really cool because it has a lot of really cool ideas. But I don't have any nostalgia for this. I don't have memories of getting through it the first time and feeling good as a kid and knowing these levels by heart like I do on some of those games. So instead, it has not aged well in any way in 2018. Other than being some cool ideas, it's a mess.
Yeah, it is a mess. And for the person that I thought had nostalgia for it, I'll accept your apology for this
Thank
game.
you. Thank you.
Good God.
We all make mistakes. Yours was general chaos, and we got that out of the way. And Jeremy P's have been numerous. And I'd have to say this is the first bad game I've picked for the podcast.
I'm sure that people would disagree, but we're not going to go into that discussion right now. I think the next episode is going to be... we've only done this once before on the podcast. You know, our rules have been that we're only going to cover things from the Nintendo 64 back, so nothing past that. We did cover Mario Maker in episode 10 or 11 or something, and it was kind of a throwback, but it's a new game. I think we need to cover the remaster/re-release of Shenmue. It just came out since the last time we recorded. I think all of us have it. I know I finished it when it first came out. I believe Jeremy did as well. And I know that Billy at least started playing it because he had some things to say. And so I'd like to cover it. I would like to cover it. Now's probably the only time we can do it where it makes any sense. So our next episode will be on Shenmue originally for the Dreamcast, but this is I'm playing on the PS4. I think it came out for PS4 only, right?
I think.
Or PC. I never know about PC. I should probably pay attention more to the PC market, but I don't. But definitely on the PS4. And so that will be our next show. We have, for the first time in a while, a listener question.
We do. It actually comes from our new website. We actually added a brand new contact form. We've made it to 2018. We've added a contact form to our website that you can easily fill out and just send us a question.
So if you have a question for us, it's easier than just sending it on Facebook or Twitter or on Instagram, the way we were asking before, which none of us consistently check those things. But this form goes to email. We do check that. So please, if you have a question, send it through our website. So this question came from our website from Seph. I'm assuming short for Sephiroth, because why else would you spell it that way? The question is, not sure if you've been asked this before, but if you guys were offered funding to come up with your own game, what kind of game would you create? I'm going to be honest, as much as I just talked shit about Chakan for the last hour, the idea of the potions in this game is the kind of thing that I really liked as a kid. I would definitely do some sort of throwback title. I'm a big fan of things that are Metroidvanias. I like, for example, I was playing Dead Cells. I think that's great. I loved Salt and Sanctuary. I'm excited about Hollow Knight coming finally for the PS4. I'm going to play that. Games like that are the kind of thing I would do, but I like the idea of these potions. Or in Metal Gear, the original Metal Gears, I liked the key cards. As dumb as that is, the little key cards with the numbers on it, for some reason, that drew me to that game. I like the idea that I have these key cards with numbers on them. Any game where you get power-ups that you find in the levels that are a little more than just like, oh, I got a new gun. Oh, I got a new shoes. Oh, I got a new... I mean, that's all fine. But I like when I get things I can kind of play with a little bit. You know, the potions in this are a great example. But you know, games where you get... there's a lot of RPGs where you'll get components for spells and you have to use different components to make different things. I love things like that. That's the sort of game I would make. Probably some sort of Metroidvania, or I would make a complete throwback title to like a Wizardry and no one would play it. That's my kind of thing.
Speaking of games no one would play, you know, I love my damn walking simulators. But the problem I always have with a lot of them is the story's great. And a good portion of them I've played, but it's very contained. It's very small. And at the heart of it, it's pretty linear. I'd love to see one where you just it's wide open. It's an open world. You know, the likes of some of the action games nowadays. But with that aspect to it, with a lot of exploration, a lot more characters to encounter and whatnot. I'm sure it would be a fucking mess. It would be a disaster. And, you know, whatever funding I did get for it would probably be pulled immediately. And if that is the case, I would then I would just make a Mansion of Hidden Souls Part 2, probably.
I guess if I had to choose, I know I don't really talk about racing games too much on this podcast, but I'm a huge racing game fan. I would probably just make it like an old school racing game. Like I loved like the original Need for Speed, the old Test Drive games. Maybe just an old point-to-point simulation driving game. Like I used to love those games. I played them constantly. I can't tell you how many hours I played the original Need for Speed on the 3DO, which was kind of a slower paced simulation. It was made by the Test Drive developers. But those were the racing games that I grew up playing. It's something that no one else probably enjoys playing, but just the aspect of driving, I enjoy driving, and that's something that even playing a video game, I enjoy doing. It relaxes me. So that's probably the game that I would make. It's not, again, it's probably not a popular game, but hey, that's what I do.
Actually, I take my answer back. I think I would just make Tomba 3.
God, no. We don't need any more bad reviews on the YouTube side. We can't do that.
Well, probably what I'd make if I didn't make Tomba 3 then is a game where I walk around and talk to people and play with coin machines and collect little toys. So hopefully we'll talk about a game like that on our next episode when we cover Shenmue, re-released for the PS4. But until then, please go to our new website at retrovania.net with links to our YouTube channel, our Facebook, our Twitter, everything else you can find Retrovaniacs, and we will see you next time.